It's June 8th, 2026. This might be a disaster. Depends on. Because, since I last played this. Yeah, it's not gonna work because you gotta use the mouse in this game to move. My keyboard, my laptop no longer functions as a laptop, so I have to have it sitting away from me because if I move the computer itself, it'll collapse. So, but we're gonna attempt to play Wolf Quest. Can I sit this down? Cat's having a hairball. You probably can't hear. Oh, my wolf was yawning. Do that again. Let me make sure I have the audio off on here. Yes. Although maybe I should turn on animal sounds. We're just going to play Wolf Quest because I don't want to play Alien Isolation at the moment. And we're going to talk about, once again, as you can probably tell from the name of the wolf, which is Wells Critical. We're going to... Oh, cool. Nice. We get to cheat. This is a randomly generated wolf. I have no idea what my stats are. So I have -1 strength, -2 stamina, good speed, and really good health. Alright, we'll see how well that works. We're on, like, the hardest difficulty. Also, my computer whole thing with the battery still in effect, so the FPS is going to be extremely low. Oh, wow. They're right there. Okay, that's not difficult at all. But we're going to talk about the ableism in Martha Wells' newest book, Platform Decay, which came out, it's June 2026. It came out May 5th, 2026. I think I have to have this sitting somewhere else. I guess not. It's fine. Oh my gosh, that thing's already... I mean, it could be a bluff. Maybe that means it's super weak. When I was recording RuneScape, like, last year, the year before that, for me, when I was playing it, it was really slow, but on the recording, it came up normal speed. So I don't know if this is going to show up as, like, the 14 FPS that I'm getting, or if it's going to show up full speed for you guys. I don't know. I don't understand how that happened. But, I guess I'll just do a summary in case this is just somebody's clicking on this mainly for the Wolf Quest gameplay. The Murderbot Diaries is a soft science fiction story by Martha Wells that has been getting published since 2017. Maybe I should bite this thing, see what its health is at before I keep chasing it further. Pretty good. Okay. It's a soft science fiction story. Started getting published in 2017. We've had 13 stories in the series so far over the 9 years that has been getting published at this point. The newest one, which is called Platform Decay, and you don't have to bother remembering any of the names of any of the books because all of the titles are completely fucking meaningless. You can't convince me that either Martha Wells or her publisher is not just throwing sci-fi sounding terms into a hat and then picking out two at random. Then the titles are meaningless. It's called Platform Decay, which is another term for enshittification, which is, remember how Google used to work and used to be really good as a search engine, and now it is absolute garbage of a search engine? That's an example of enshittification. It describes lots of things, such as, like, just the basic fact that it's supposed to let you search the internet and give you accurate results based on what you type in. But now it's just whoever pays them the most gets on the first page, and they're going to replace the whole thing with AI, apparently. Generative AI chatbot instead of a search engine, which is what it's for. This is called that. platform decay, which is just another word for enshittification. But that has nothing to do with it. It's not a conversation about enshittification. It's not even literal. There's no literal platforms that are decaying under the character's feet. Nothing like that. They're on an old fucking space station that should literally not exist in this setting, but it does because it's badly written. But it's not even like that. Thing's decaying, you could say, under their feet as, you know, a platform in a literal sense. The title is just completely fucking meaningless. Also, if you're wondering, I am not just chasing these guys because I am too distracted to do it properly. I'm chasing them until they all just get too tired to run away, because then they'll be more likely to fall over. I think, if I remember correctly, I just have to make sure I don't get run over by the parents. If you chase them long enough, they will just start walking. And when they're on hills and stuff, they're more likely to fall down and get hurt by themselves without me having to get kicked in the face. So, you don't have to worry about remembering the title, but this newest one is called Platform Decay, and why am I walking? The game doesn't know either. The newest one is called Platform Decay, and main key thing that you have to know is that this series is ableist, and if this is your first time hearing that word, ableism, think of the word racism. It's bigotry based on race, or perceived race, because, well, we won't get into the whole thing of race as a social construct. Ableism is bigotry against disabled people, and the Murderbot Diaries, which is this book series, has been ableist since the very first book came out. And specifically, the thing a lot of physically disabled people noticed is that it is casually dehumanizing us, physically disabled people, as a matter of course, like it's just a normal thing and nobody is supposed to notice. We're not supposed to question it. We're not supposed to be upset by it, even though physically disabled people in this series are just being framed as literally not human, or at least not as human as able-bodied people. And this has been clear to people since 2017 when the first book came out. See, that one just fell over, but we're not attacking the mom, but she just fell over back there. I guess I can zoom out. Let me pick a zoom. If you've read the first book and you're like, what? That doesn't happen. See? Now we can get... Alright. Low frame rate's making me not sure if I'm pushing the buttons or if the buttons are pushing and it's just being slow about it. This thing really doesn't want to get back to its feet. Or maybe that's just the low frame rate. We gotta give them some space so they can keep running off again. If you know anything about science fiction, if you've ever read any story with cyborgs of any kind, well, there's several problems going on here. First of all, Martha Wells is pretentious, and thinks being pretentious is the same thing as being clever. Alright, she's gonna kick me again. Maybe I should explain. The reason we're hunting elk right now is because when you start a new game in WolfQuest, you have to prove your hunting prowess to other wolves by killing 2 elk as a tutorial for the game to show you actually know what you're doing before you get given the responsibility of feeding a bunch of babies that are extremely hungry, which requires you to hunt a lot. So the game developers want to make sure you actually know how to hunt before you get given all that extra stress. So, anyways, Martha Wells is pretentious. So there are cyborgs in this series, including the main character, but she doesn't call them cyborgs because she thinks reinventing the wheel is the same thing as being a clever writer. And so instead of calling them cyborgs, she calls them augmented humans instead. And in theory, this could be totally fine, pretensions aside. Yeah, run, run, run! Oh, I think they made the damage numbers slightly bigger. I like that. Whoop. That could be totally fine, except there's a problem, because, you know, you can call somebody a disabled person. That's totally fine. It becomes not fine when that is all that you say in reference to these people. So, in the Murderbot Diaries, in book 1, and literally never challenged in any of the books, and in fact, it gets worse the longer the series goes on and the more books come out, we never just describe somebody as an augmented human because it's actually relevant to the scenario, the way you can describe someone as a disabled person when it's relevant. But what this series does, because Martha Wells is ableist, is every single time... I'm playing Wolf Quest and trying to avoid getting kicked. See, we did that, and we still have almost full health. Now we have that marked on the map, and we'll attempt to kill... Does this elk have twins? What Martha Wells does in this story... I'm going to take my glasses off for a second to clean my... What Martha Wells does, we don't simply refer to people as augmented humans when it's relevant. No, because that would be not bigoted. Instead, we refer to people as augmented humans every single goddamn time. And every single time we mention the existence of augmented humans, aka cyborgs, aka physically disabled people, it's as a completely separate group from the normal humans. So if we will just get told there were humans and augmented humans standing over there in a crowd or something like that. Which is just dehumanization. And it would be fine if this were relevant, like, you know, maybe say a fucking... Whoop, oh my gosh. Cat knocked over a broom at the same time that we got run over by an elk, and this one tripped. This would be a fine thing to say if it were relevant to whatever is going on, but it's never fucking relevant. This would be a fine thing to say. You can say there was a crowd of humans and augmented humans if it were, say, a protest for the rights of augmented humans as disabled people. I don't know why my frame rate's going up, but I'm not complaining. Look how fast it's moving now. We're almost at 30 FPS. I don't know what changed. Maybe we were just in range of multiple herds at the same time. But it's never said just when it's relevant. It's said every single time, so that we are literally never allowed to forget that physically disabled people in this universe, cyborgs, augmented humans, are not considered human. Because if every single fucking time you talk about somebody, you don't just call them a person. You emphasize that they are an augmented person or an augmented human, as in opposition to the normal humans who are just the default. That's just dehumanization. And this has been ongoing since the first book. And everybody gave it a side eye. All the physically disabled people with critical thinking skills who are aware of what this is gave it a side eye in the first book, and then went on to read the next book assuming, okay, well, this is here on purpose, right? We're here to do commentary, right? we're going to talk about this later, right? Because this first book ends so abruptly, so clearly something more is planned for the series. I like that they changed how big the numbers are. They're much nicer to read. Oh, we got an injury. Well, okay, we'll just do this. And it's never improved. We've never had a single conversation about this casual dehumanization. There's never been any justifications for it. A lot of people in the fandom will make up excuses retroactively, like saying, oh, Murderbot always differentiates between them, and then they're just making this shit up out of thin air and saying, it's because Murderbot prefers interacting with augmented humans because it's also an augmented human, so it finds it easier to communicate with them, and that's just flat out not true. That's literally not true. First of all, Murderbot has 0 positive interactions with any augmented human in the entire series that I can fucking think of. Absolutely, in the first book. That was my fault, I think. In the first book, the only other augmented human, aka cyborg, in the story is a racist piece of shit jackass who violates Murderbot's brain, who fucking Jedi mind rapes Murderbot while it is unconscious and reveals its secrets to everyone, and is a massive fucking asshole to Murderbot the entire goddamn time. But people are pretending, Murderbot, Martha Wells, the author, only differentiates between the two groups of able-bodied people, aka real humans, and augmented humans, because that's just what Murderbot thinks, because Murderbot prefers interacting with augmented people, and it's like, that's objectively not true. First of all, Murderbot does not prefer to interact with augmented humans. It also has 0 trouble communicating with literally anybody at any point in the entire series. Just because we are told by the author that Murderbot is socially awkward and doesn't like talking to people doesn't mean it actually struggles to fucking talk to people or communicate in any way. That's just not true. Oop. I'm thirsty. See, the frame rate got higher. Oh, it's really high for a second. Now it's dropping again. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the trees. The game is not the problem here. The problem here is my computer's absolute crap and should probably have gotten thrown away years ago, but I'm stingy and I'm not wasting. Oh, right as I got done biting it. Wait, game, come on. All right, we just gotta wait for that to happen again. Anyways, people will just make up excuses for this shit retroactively when they have literally no basis in the story at all. And that's if they admit it's a problem in the first place, and most people don't. They will happily admit they have no idea what I'm talking about when I mention this, and then when I explain the problem to them, they'll be like, oh, well, that's not a problem. After they just admitted they have no idea what I'm talking about and didn't notice anything. And then they go, oh, well, that's not a problem, because Martha Wells wants us to think it's bad. What is this based on? Is this based on evidence from within the text that criticizes this casual dehumanization? No, they're just making this up. They're claiming, after literally saying they have no idea what I'm talking about and did not notice anything, then they turn around to say, well, actually, the author wants us to think it's bad, so therefore it's fine and not ableist in any way, when they just admitted they didn't notice this was happening at all. So they go from saying, oh, I literally didn't notice that existed, to claiming and just flat out lying to your face. no, that's fine because the author wants us to think it's bad. That's why it's in there. And it's like, okay, but if the author wanted you to think it's bad, then why did you literally not notice it? Why did you literally have no idea what I was talking about? That's not how this works. Like, these people will literally admit they have no idea what you're talking about, and then when you take the time and waste your time explaining the problem to them, they'll go, oh, well, that's not actually a problem because I just said so based on nothing, and I'm gonna lie. If the author wanted you to think that this dehumanization was bad, you would have noticed it, and I wouldn't be complaining about it if that were actually the case. But it is never challenged within the story, not even getting hinted at being challenged.
As that one word he mentions, it's not even alluded to.
Yeah. It's not even alluded to being a fucking problem. We can't blame this on well, that's just what Murderbot does. Because, no, it's not. Just because Murderbot is the narrator doesn't mean you can blame every problem with the author's real-world bigotry on the character. Murderbot isn't a real person. It is a fictional character being written by a white woman from Texas who has been ableist for decades and continues to double down on that ableism with every new book that comes out. And furthermore, again, if it were just meant to be Murderbot being a bigot, then that would be totally fine, and I wouldn't be complaining about it, but that's not what's happening. Because if it were simply Murderbot being a bigot, this would have been confronted within the story and condemned within the story. And when you point this out, people will just start saying all kinds of bullshit. Just saying, well, nobody has criticized it because Murderbots never said it out loud, so they don't know about it. And it's like, you are just pulling shit out of your ass right now to defend a problem that you literally just told me you didn't notice was a problem. Like, yeah, Murderbot never says this out loud because it's stated as word of God by the fucking author in the narration and the narrative. If it were actually being presented as a problem, then Murderbot would say it out. There's multiple options here. But people who don't use critical thinking skills and don't have basic... What key did I make jump? Okay, well, not that, obviously, but we're going to sleep anyways. People who don't understand basic fucking media literacy or how writing works refuse to grasp. There are multiple ways you can make this actual social commentary and critique of ableism and dehumanization, but none of those things are happening. First, option 1, we can have Murderbot be the bigot. This requires Murderbot being confronted. Option 2, see, this is why we slept far away, but the bear is still acting annoyed. What? Okay. We're gonna go over here and go back to sleep. Boo. We could have... That was interesting. Did I pick the shortest howl by accident? Interesting. I guess so. I have the game on silent. I don't know why the FPS is so high right now, but... Say, where even are we? We'll just go north and look for some people. What was I saying?
This was actually an issue in there.
Yes. If this was actually a problem and a thing we were meant to see as a problem and, notice, which able-bodied people tend not to do, even though they will then immediately turn around and claim they are the expert on the thing that you just had to spell out to them. Or, we could have just made it so that Murderbot is aware that this is a problem and has to deal with slave owners saying this shit all the goddamn time. And we can even pretend for a second that this is a version of the story not written by a fucking white supremacist who loves slavery. And, in this version of the goddamn story, slave owners would be the goddamn villains at all times and would be despised by not only the main character, but the narrative itself. Because that's how morals work. But no, it's just stated as matter of God by the narrative and the main character, who is never challenged on this in any way, because it's what the author wants us to just accept as a matter of course. She doesn't want us to think about it. We're not supposed to notice it. We're just supposed to fucking just mindlessly accept the fact that, of course, people with physical disabilities aren't human. Of course they're subhuman. If you look at those, you can't have the horror. You can't have prosthetics and be human. That's just basic biology. If you have too many prosthetics because you're so disabled, or you are mutilated at birth to be enslaved, and you are made disabled that way on purpose to enslave you, well, obviously that means you're not human. That's just basic biology. Because Martha Wells is a fucking white supremacist who is spouting Nazi levels of dehumanization and eugenics rhetoric. And also, she literally keeps doing eugenics in every goddamn book series she writes and celebrating it. But people want to pretend she's progressive because they don't give a fuck and they also think eugenics is good. Let's try howling again so we can find somebody. Nothing. Okay. We are in like the weirdest, smallest little corner of the map. What was I saying now? Yeah, there's so many ways that you could actually condemn this if the point of it were to be condemned. Oh, there they are. Let's go this way. Find this person. If you look at the map marker, the more brightly saturated the thing is, the closer they are. Because I have the game on mute, so you can actually hear me and we don't keep getting echoes. But the point of this dehumanization as a matter of course, the point of it is that this is just what Martha Wells thinks and wants us all to accept without question, because we're not supposed to question this. If we notice it, which most people don't, because that it's just the propaganda is just working on them, then we are not supposed to have a single problem with it in any way. And this is also just continuing into every aspect of the goddamn series, because the whole thing is literally just based around slavery apologism and the fucking fantasy of a white supremacist of being such a good slave owner that your slaves love you so much that they will kill themselves to defend you. Because Martha Wells, including still in 2026, she just said this shit again in May 2026 in a new interview. She just keeps casually and happily telling people, oh, by the way, the original plan for All Systems Red was that Murderbot, the slave, who worships its slave owners before the story even starts, was going to successfully commit suicide to protect those precious cinnamon roll slave owners that Martha Wells tells us that we should worship because they're so adorable and they're such good slave owners that Murderbot loves them and is willing to commit suicide to protect them, because that's how you know that Murderbot is one of the good ones. That's the whole plot of the first book, and Martha Wells will just casually admit that, yeah, the original plan was for Murderbot to literally succeed at killing itself to protect these slave owners. But then she realized she could make more money by continuing the story on, even though there's no actual fucking story here, and that it would be less depressing for Murderbot to continue living, to continue worshipping these slave owners for another day. We'll howl again, because I don't know which direction these are. And Murderbot is dehumanized at every step of the fucking way through eugenics and Nazi levels of dehumanization, because Murderbot in the story is a slave, a specific type of slave that is referred to as a security unit to dehumanize it. And the story tries to, the first book, Martha Wells is a shit writer. Okay, I don't know which one of these guys is actually closest. Okay, yeah, I guess it is this way. Martha Wells is a really fucking shitty writer, and she has no plan for the series and has no idea what she's talking about, and you can tell. Because she really wants to convince us that Murderbot is simultaneously not a robot, because she defines robot as fully mechanical only, because she's bad at writing, and in this universe they're just shortened to bots as fully mechanical people. Except we aren't even supposed to see them as people, because she's a white supremacist, and she just loves inventing disposable people that aren't really people, that should just be happy to be killed for the sake of slave owners. I'm getting into so many goddamn things. Huh?
For the sake of their betters.
Yeah, for the sake of their betters, is how Martha Wells views it. And I'm just trying to give you context for the ableism, and we are half an hour into here, so you can just fucking watch all the other things I recorded. Okay, we've established physically disabled people in here. Oh, here are the stranger wolves, so hopefully they're friendly and not going to try and kill me. Oh, there's a bunch of them. Some of those ones might try to kill me. Let me try and... Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm currently a male wolf, so the male wolves will attack me. Yeah. Anyways, let's just go back to Platform Decay. Context, throw it out the window. You can just look up stuff by yourself. Oh, they're coming over to me. They might attack me. Don't attack me. We can all be friends, guys. Okay, they're leaving. We're probably safe. I'm naming this one Boof, because that's what it looks like it says. Yeah, in Platform Decay, we get introduced... Why are you doing airplane ears? I'm not scary. As I run into a tree. In Platform Decay, we get introduced to a new character. We finally have a fucking physically disabled character in the goddamn story that's admitted to be physically disabled. Thanks, Boof. This is easy. Aren't we supposed to be on the difficulty? But I guess it just depends on how friendly this one is. Let me wag my tail. The game said no. We get introduced to our first ever physically disabled character that's actually admitted to be physically disabled, and it literally took 9 goddamn years and 13 stories in this series. Okay, now we get to hang out and impress Boof. This wolf is named 800F. It just looks like it says boof. So, the new character that has never appeared in the series before now, literally not even mentioned in the background, is named Naja. And she's an elderly lady. So the very first representation we get for physically disabled characters who are admitted to be physically disabled is an elderly lady. Which, like, we don't even know how old she is. But that's the so-called representation we finally get, and it's just an elderly lady. And that could be fine if we admitted that physically disabled people exist even before we are elderly. But no. So, okay. We have to take what we get from this shitty fucking series. Oh, by the way, only reason I am continuing to read it so far is that somebody has to actually criticize what is going on in here instead of worshiping it and pretending it's the best thing ever and, like, the most prestigious writing ever invented, because that's how the rest of the fandom treats it. It is sacrosanct to these people. I don't know. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Let's go get Boof some fucking food. Assuming there's not a bear there still. So we finally get a physically disabled character. Unfortunately, it's just an elderly person. So we don't actually get anything, like, interesting or something that could maybe remind people that physically disabled people of all ages exist. We could have had a disabled child. We could have just had anybody, but nope, it just has to be an elderly lady. And it's like, okay, fine. That's what I just said. We could have had a disabled child. Yeah, Sophie. We also get introduced to a child named Sophie. Who the fuck knows how old she is? Martha Wells sure doesn't. She goes from acting like a toddler to acting like a fucking preteen. Martha Wells is terrible at writing and is especially terrible at writing children. Their ages can range from, well, we don't fucking know. Is she 7? Or is she 17? Is she 3 years old? We don't fucking know. We don't know. But all we get is an elderly lady. It's like, okay, the bare minimum, you mean. The bare fucking minimum. So literally, in 9 years and 13 goddamn stories, the only physically disabled person that Martha Wells can bear to write about and bear to acknowledge the existence of is if you're only physically disabled because you've lived a long time. And that's it. Nothing from injury, nothing from just congenital conditions, nothing. Also, congenital, in case anybody doesn't know, just means you've had it since you were born. We don't get any kind of disability rep for those things because eugenics. Because Martha Wells is a eugenicist and believes in eugenics. So that's why the only fucking physically disabled person we get that is acknowledged as physically disabled is an elderly lady. And we don't know how old she is. And despite her being and the only thing that's disabled about her is her knees hurt. And that's it. Like, that's literally it. She doesn't have anything else, quote unquote, wrong with her. Watch out, that baby was like trying to walk under your shoe. It's just that her knees are bad. This is an extremely old lady. And the extent of her disability is having bad knees. And again, this could be totally fine, except for the rest of the goddamn story and how this character is handled and framed and presented to us. So the plot of this book, long story short, it's not even a long story. Short story, short. Murderbot the slave has been sent to rescue its slave owners because they're useless and got themselves kidnapped by doing useless shit. for no reason. There's no good reason for it at any point. There you go, boof. Oh, I guess I will turn off the carcasses, in case people don't like it. Gameplay. They slightly changed this. There it is. We'll do that. What? Are you growling at me? What's that face? I think Boof is nervous. You can eat it. I'm not gonna steal it. I brought you here. I brought you takeout. I brought you here for you to get the food. I'm not gonna steal it from you. Anyways, the plot of this is that the slave owner characters, of which Naja is one, she's also just extremely fucking racist, and we're not actually supposed to have a problem with her being racist. Like, at no point in the story so far does she ever stop glaring at the slave that is risking its life to protect her and her other worthless slave-owning family members. Anyways, the plot is that Naja and It Doesn't Matter have been kidnapped. So now, let us walk away from this and then go to sleep. I guess we'll do it like right here. The point of this is that Naja and her family members are supposedly on the run for their lives. So you would think they should be trying to move quickly. You would think that this character, coming from a society that's supposed to be a utopia and is supposed to not be a capitalist dystopia, you would think this character, as an old lady with bad knees, you would think she would arrive at the kidnapping situation already using mobility aids. You'd think that, but you'd be wrong, and you could maybe even think, very generously, well, yeah, she definitely had mobility aids, but it was taken away from her when she got kidnapped. Now we can have part of the plot being we need to get her a new mobility aid. But no, that's incorrect, because Martha Wells is a eugenicist and thinks that disabled people should be... Is that a Wolverine? Aren't I Amethyst? Oh, I'm... Okay, I didn't even notice I was on Helrari Mountain. I clicked that and then immediately forgot. No, Boof! Boof, don't fight a Wolverine! No, we don't need to fight Wolverines. That is unnecessary. I have mate death turned on, by the way. We can just hang out and howl. We don't need to fight Wolverines. What was I saying? Oh, I guess we can do a pack rally for no reason at all. It's not like we're doing anything right now. The point is, Naja doesn't use mobility aids because Martha Wells, the author... Cool, look at that was a cute little animation. Do that again. You got a little animation going on. Super cute. I think Boof is sleepy, so we're just going back to sleep. Oh. Can't. Alright, we'll just lay down. Boof is at 100% health. We're pretty much at 100% health, so we're just gonna run around. I have auto run, so we'll just do that. So, Naja, despite coming from a planet where healthcare is free if you're a slave owner, which they all are, because the economy is run by slave labor, so, oh, this is totally a communist utopia where we don't even know what money is. No, they don't have money because the slaves do all the work for them and they don't pay them. That's what Martha Wells is framing as a communist utopia. Communist, socialist, whatever utopia. Where, yeah, the slave owners get everything they want for free because the slaves do all the work. So you would think Naja, being a disabled elderly person from this so-called utopia where she can have anything she wants for free, you would assume, if you give a fuck about physically disabled people, that she gets a free mobility aid. But she doesn't have one, not because it would cost too much money and she can't afford it. She just doesn't want one because Martha Wells, like every other goddamn ableist piece of shit, thinks that physically disabled people should be ashamed of using mobility aids. Even in a literal life and death situation where a child of indeterminable age that we're supposed to pretend Naja really, really fucking cares about because it's like her granddaughter or whatever. We're supposed to pretend Naja cares about this child whose life is also at risk and whose life will be saved by getting out of this place as quickly as possible. But then we're also supposed to believe that simultaneously Naja wants to protect this child, but also Naja's gonna slow everybody down on purpose by being too stubborn to use a mobility aid because mobility aids are shameful, according to the author. So therefore, all physically disabled people are and should be, because this is never goddamn questioned within the story. It's not confronted. It's never questioned. This is just presented as, this is just how physically disabled people are. We are ashamed to use mobility aids. We always deny the fact that we are in pain. And we refuse help because ableism. Because Martha Wells is a fucking ableist. And she's a fucking eugenicist, which is why the only disabled person that we admit is disabled. Because Murderbot is also a fucking cyborg, but we don't admit that Murderbot is physically disabled. Because it's not. It can do whatever it wants. And being a cyborg doesn't hinder it or affect it in any way besides giving it every superpower in the fucking book. Huh? Just that statement, or
No. Very
is
funny.
that a shitty eBay listing?
No, it's, I was laughing at the Google Translate.
Okay.
Fail.
So, not only is our first ever physically disabled character who is admitted to be physically disabled an elderly lady who refuses to use mobility aids because they're shameful and embarrassing, it gets worse. Because, like, okay, even ignoring the fact that we are being told that using a mobility aid is shameful and you should be ashamed of it, because again, nobody ever questions or confronts this idea that it's shameful in any goddamn way. Again, she's endangering the life of a child that we're supposed to pretend she cares about in this refusal to use a mobility aid. And we don't confront that either. And it's absurd. But it gets worse because later, when her disability does start acting up with her bad knees and starts hurting her when they're walking, first of all, she says, rather than agreeing to use a mobility aid of any kind, including a fucking electric wheelchair that can move faster than anybody can walk, she says, just leave me behind. So the old woman is so ashamed of being disabled that she would rather commit suicide and go back to being in a concentration camp than use a super sci-fi wheelchair for like half a fucking hour. That has already been provided for, by the way. Like, they have unlimited amounts of money because they are all disgustingly rich. Because they're disgustingly rich slave owners. It's not like there's no trouble in acquiring a wheelchair for her. It's just that Martha Wells says and presents as word of God fact that we are not meant to question, that using a mobility aid if you are physically disabled is so shameful that it's just completely natural and nobody will question you about it whatsoever, that you should just insist that the best alternative is for you to commit suicide by telling your able-bodied companions to leave you behind so that you can either be murdered or thrown back into a literal concentration camp. And this is just presented as, yeah, of course, that's what the disabled person would say. Of course the disabled people want to be left behind and thrown into concentration camps. Yeah, of course, that's just totally natural. And again, this character is not supposed to be from the dystopia. She's supposedly from a utopia where ableism isn't her thing. And you know, everybody gets free healthcare, and by everybody, Martha Wells means the slave owners. But we're not, again, this isn't ironic. We're not supposed to see this as a dystopia. We're not supposed to grasp that these are all slave owners and that's why they don't use money, because you don't fucking pay slaves. She expects us to think this place really is a utopia. But then the fucking utopia that doesn't stigmatize disability, presumably, still is producing elderly people who are so ashamed at the thought of using a fucking wheelchair in a life or death situation for like half an hour is more shameful and a terrible fate than being abandoned to die in a concentration camp. And this is just what Martha Wells is presenting to her audience as something we should just accept as completely natural. We shouldn't question it. We shouldn't.
We should just find it.
We
funny.
should just find this, huh?
We should just find it funny that she's just that stubborn.
Yeah, we're supposed to laugh at the fact that this woman is so stubborn that she would rather go back to being in a concentration camp than use a fucking mobility aid, even though her refusing to use the mobility aid is slowing down the group and actively risking her granddaughter's life that we're told she cares about and doesn't want anything to happen to. Did I just accidentally growl? I meant to roll. Sorry. I was hitting F. I meant to hit 4. Sorry. I think I just growled at Boof. By accident. Forgive me, Boof. Okay, we're just gonna keep running. So not only does Martha Wells present this as just the natural consequence of disabled people existing, that of course we all hate ourselves and would rather commit suicide than use a mobility aid, even in a life-threatening situation where we are in active pain and all we have to do to stop being in pain is use a fucking wheelchair in the sci-fi future. But Martha Wells just tells us, in a way that no goddamn character is genuinely upset by or confronts in any way, that disabled people should just, and this is to show that Naja is a good person, because she's telling everybody to just abandon her because she's physically disabled, so just abandon her to die. That's just eugenics. That's what's going on. And Martha Wells is just presenting it as totally normal. This isn't like a horrifying situation or anything, and it's not caused because they can't get a mobility aid, and that because, you know, maybe we pretend just for 5 seconds that this is an actual dystopia, anti-capitalist dystopia that written by somebody who gives a fuck about poor people. Pretend they are poor people. They're not, because Martha Wells is also a classist piece of shit who worships the rich and hates poor people. Imagine if this were a story where her mobility aid that she had to work her entire goddamn life to be able to afford was stolen from her when they got kidnapped. And even though they found it again, it was completely smashed to pieces and unusable, and there's nobody that can fix it because, again, pretend capitalist dystopia for realsies. It's got proprietary parts that you can't just go and get at any generic store. It has to be XYZ extremely fucking specific shape with software that will fucking, what is the term? Brick?
Yes.
That will brick itself if you plug it into the wrong type of charger or something like that. So then she literally can't move without being in fucking agony if she can move at all. She can walk without a mobility aid. It's just extremely painful for her, which is a reason many people use mobility aids, and that is in fact a good fucking reason to use them. You don't have to be fully paralyzed from the waist down or whatever to use a wheelchair. What happened? Oh. Minor injury to leg has healed. Yay. Do I have a major injury too? Oh, I did not even notice. Here we are talking about disability. My wolf's got a broken leg. Just running around on. Go to sleep. Our wolves are getting sleepy. What was I going to say? That pop-up distracted me. Yeah, oh yeah, if this were actually a dystopia where we give a fuck about poor people, then this would be a situation where she can no longer, she's been running for her life this whole time, and the pain in her fucking legs has been increasing with every fucking step she takes, and they cannot get her another mobility device because it's, like, literally costs an arm and a fucking leg to be able to afford. Maybe not literally in this sense, but also maybe literally. And we can pretend that, you know, Murderbot isn't completely overpowered and can't carry her, which it can in the fucking book, but that's not listed as an option because reasons. Even though there's no good reason for it not to be carrying her. And the kid. It can literally carry both of them. Because the kid is so small, logically you would think that she's having trouble keeping up with the adults. But again, Martha Wells is shit at writing. That's what logic would tell you. Not with this game, though. There's no reason Murderbot can't be carrying this child and the elderly lady with bad knees, but it's not, because Martha Wells needs to pad out the word count by nothing happening. Aww. My leg is injured, so I can't do the cute, playful trot. We were just gonna run around here in circles and play. Yeah. But this isn't actually a dystopia, so they can afford any fucking mobility aid they want. It can, in fact, just be pulled out of thin air, pretty much. This isn't a situation where she has no choice but to continue moving forward through agony until she literally can't keep walking anymore. She can keep walking. She can get a mobility aid anytime she wants. It's just that Martha Wells wants us all to accept, without question, that using a mobility aid is so fucking shameful and is something you should never, ever, ever, ever fucking want to do. Unless, and even if you have no other choice, you should still volunteer to fucking commit suicide by letting yourself get murdered or thrown back in a concentration camp rather than use one. Because any disabled person who is willing to use a mobility aid, I guess according to Martha Wells, is a pathetic bad person. Because what other conclusion are we meant to come to? This is, again, can't stress enough, no character has an actual problem with this.
It's literally just supposed to be a funny joke about stubborn old people.
Mm-hmm. And it gets worse. And you're like, how could it possibly get worse? Well, because, let me get a drink quick. Because later, they do eventually get her a mobility aid because she's forced into getting in one by her adult daughter. And they don't get her a wheelchair because that is too fucking shameful, even when she's being forced into it. So what, because, like, she literally refuses to get a wheelchair, even though this is a super sci-fi future. A wheelchair could probably go faster than a goddamn car in 2026 and would have zero problems. But she refuses because wheelchairs are shameful, according to Martha Wells. Using mobility aids is disgusting and shameful, and you should never willingly do it. And if you are forced to do it, you have to turn down a wheelchair the easiest and most comfortable option for most people, because that's just so fucking shameful that you should in fact rather commit suicide by fucking concentration camp. I forgot, we're not going towards the river. If we're on Hell Roaring Mountain. This is not the river. We don't want to go up there. We'll get shot. We're going the other way again. I keep forgetting this is not Amethyst Mountain. Let me just move the pack territories. Okay. Mistakes were almost made. We could have just died if I had kept going north without checking the map again. I was wondering why I didn't recognize any of these mountain ridges. Anyways, yeah. So eventually she is forced to get a mobility aid, which Martha Wells presents as the only good way that you should ever get a mobility aid. If you are forced into it, because everything else is so shameful, you should literally prefer to commit suicide over doing it, because Martha Wells is a eugenicist who hates disabled people. So eventually, Naja gets a mobility aid. It's not a wheelchair, though, because that would be even more shameful. And what she gets is not properly described at any point.
It's the most minimal support.
What is that? It is... Is that literally how it's described? What are we looking at?
They had to blah, blah, blah,
Is this a rock?
this minimal support one.
I can't tell if this is a weird rock. Okay, it's a weird rock. I thought it was like a wolf just hanging out down here. It's a rock. Look at that texture on the rock. We're finding the quote quick. Yeah, like, very specifically, it's not a wheelchair because that would be too comfortable and too helpful for this physically disabled person. And shameful. Because among so many other things, Martha Wells is a capitalist, and that involves being individualist and worshipping the idea that you should never ask anybody for help. Including if you're physically disabled and have bad knees and have been walking for who knows how long and are in pain. Yeah, we need to not go north. Oh, and by the way, these books don't have tables of content. Table of contents. I don't know how you say the plural of a table of contents. Tables of contents. They don't have them, so, like, I don't know what chapter that appears in, but even if I did, I wouldn't be able to just easily flip to it because there's no table of contents at the start of the book telling you, hey, chapter 9 starts on page blah blah blah, chapter blah starts on blah blah blah, because...
It's in chapter 6.
Okay, it's in chapter 6.
Murderbot paid for one, and after some prodding from Farai, Naja put her feet on the pads and leaned on the balance rail and let it walk for her. They had a variety, including some where the human could sit down, but getting Naja to agree to this minimum support model had been hard enough.
So Martha Wells literally saying using mobility aids is shameful, and everybody should be ashamed of them, and you should have to be forced into it, and even when you are forced into it, you should still absolutely refuse.
You need a wheelchair.
You need...
You're getting a fucking walker instead.
Yeah, this old lady needs a fucking wheelchair to get off her knees, but instead she's being given something that she has to continue standing and leaning on a balance rail, whatever the fuck that means, and letting it walk for her. So what I am imagining is her fucking legs are being strapped into something, and then it is physically moving her legs. But that's not described. So that's what I would imagine if you told me this. But that's not described in any way. So she's still being forced to stand because, again, if you're physically disabled and you would like to not be in agony, well, you should be ashamed of that, and you should literally rather kill yourself than ask for help or accept help. That's what Martha Wells is just presenting as fact in 2026. Now the old lady is still being forced to stand on her knees that are causing her fucking agony. and we're pretending that, well, she's no longer bending her knees, so that's good enough. And also, before this, Murderbot, who does this to everybody, and we're not supposed to have a problem with it because who gives a fuck about surveillance states or consent? Murderbot is constantly performing invasive medical fucking scans on people all the time without ever once getting permission. And the Martha Wells doesn't want us to think this is a disgusting violation of privacy or anything. Like, no, we're just supposed to think, oh yeah, that's cool. That's totally awesome for Murderbot to do to literally everybody at all times without ever asking permission. Murderbot could find out you're pregnant before you know you're pregnant, and it won't ask your permission to scan this. It'll just do it, because this whole thing is propaganda for a fucking surveillance state, among so many other things. Yeah, Murderbot scanned Naja, this old lady, after we were told that she was in fucking agony from being disabled and being forced to walk on her bad knees for however much time has passed. That's unclear as well. And now you're thinking, okay, so Murderbot's doing a scan on the elderly lady who has bad knees that are causing her agony to the point that she's slowing down the entire group, and you are forcing her to use a mobility aid. So imagine a medical scan that you do on somebody with bad knees, whose bad knees are causing them agony. What do you expect is going to show up on this scan? You might be thinking, yeah, lots of inflammation and stress, I don't know, medical shit around the knee joints, which is putting stress on her heart and everything else about your body. Because I don't know, I mean, Martha Wells clearly does. Pain is a source of massive fucking stress on your body, and stress will literally kill you. Being in pain means that your entire fucking body is being put under undue duress that is going to make you struggle to do anything else at all. So Murderbot's doing a medical scan on this lady that is in agony from her disability being exacerbated. What do you think shows up on the scan? Are we showing cognitive depression, like literally not depression, but like cognitive, the technical term. Are we showing increased ability to concentrate or decreased ability to concentrate? Are we showing just overall general weakness, expounding? Because these are bulls, I think. No, there's a baby. It's like one baby. Alright, time to see if Boof will actually help us hunt or if she's going to be useless. Are we showing any of the effects that chronic pain will do to somebody? Especially an elderly person who's already been under stress for the last, who knows how many days? You know, she was literally put in she was kidnapped, first of all. Put in a concentration camp. Then kidnapped out of the concentration camp and held hostage for I think at least 3 days.
At least.
For being held hostage. We don't know how long she was in the concentration camp. And now she just saw somebody die really grossly, and also had to, well, not had to, but chose to murder that person via fucking overdosing them on medicine and claiming this was a mercy kill. It's just flat out murder of and the person we are not going to get into that. It could have been it's just Martha Wells is a white supremacist. We'll end it there. But so this old lady is under reasonably a shit ton of stress, to put it lightly. Not only the stress and trauma of being kidnapped and put in a fucking concentration camp and then being held hostage, she just saw somebody die. Her granddaughter and daughter are both in life-threatening danger with her, and to make everything worse, she's had to walk for hours straight at this point, and her knees are causing her agony. This is an old fucking lady. We don't know how old she is, but we know she's old. Multiple generations of people refer to her as Nana. She's old. Now Murderbot is doing a medical scan on her. Do we think the stress, the trauma, especially the physical trauma ongoing to her knees right now, is going to show up on the medical scan? You think the stress is affecting her heart, her whole body? You would think so. You would think we would see, like, acute fucking exhaustion brought on by days of not getting enough sleep, not getting enough food. Just kidding, they were perfectly fed and allowed to sleep because they're rich, disgusting fucking slave owners and they get whatever they want. They weren't actually starved or anything because Martha Wells is a useless writer who worships rich people. But you would think the stress would be showing on her body, especially because her knees are causing her agony to the point that she can't walk much further. But what we get instead is her vital signs are perfectly normal. Perfectly. Look, there's a den.
They're within acceptable range.
Yeah, that means perfectly fucking normal. Den. If I run over here, will we discover this den? Yeah. Her vital signs are within acceptable within acceptable parameters?
Within acceptable range or something.
Within acceptable range. A thing that Martha Wells was a statement that Martha Wells was making fun of earlier in the series, but I guess she forgot she was making fun of that statement and that phrasing because we're just using it unironically now. So this old lady who has been kidnapped twice, thrown in a concentration camp, just saw somebody die very violently when she thought she and her daughter, adult daughter, and young grandchild, she thought they were all also gonna die right there. And now she's had to walk for hours and hours and hours and can barely keep going. Whoop. The microphone is blocking my access to the space bar. Oh, I thought I was gonna die. I thought my wolf was dying for a second. Yeah! It glitched for a second. I thought we were just gonna flop over dead. I was like, that shouldn't happen, but okay. No, Boof, keep going! Keep going! That's one thing I don't like about the game. If you are too slow to continue keeping up at a certain distance with the elk, your mate will just circle back to you. It's like, no, keep going. I'm still coming in the right direction. Just keep hunting. Anyways, pro tip. If you're playing this, if you're low on stamina, you can just push and unpush the forward bar to keep going, but you're like technically not running for a few seconds so that you gain stamina faster. I don't know if you can even see that that's what I'm doing because the FPS is so slow, but I'm doing that. I mean, we can also just walk. Doesn't really matter. Yeah. So, Murderbot does the invasive medical scan on this old woman without her permission, without even telling her, and the scan comes back. She's totally fine. She's completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with her. And this isn't a sign of, oh fuck, something is completely fucking screwed with Murderbot's medical scanner and it's getting completely wrong results. Nope, this is just fact. This old woman who is in agony from walking on bad knees for hours, she's completely healthy. There's nothing wrong with her. Her knees are totally healthy and fine, even though she's been under stress for the past 3+ days in life-threatening danger, just saw somebody die, and has been walking on her bad knees so much she can barely keep going forward at this point. And then the medical scan says she's completely healthy and totally fine. We don't get any information about the state her fucking knees are in. We don't get any information on her stress levels are so high it's going to start threatening her heart. Gizmo! What are you doing? Nothing like that. No. Instead, we're told the old lady, her scan comes back completely clean. There's nothing wrong with her. But we're told she just looks slumped. Want to get me that exact quote as well? Hello, little kitty. We're getting that quote. Here's the exact quote. I scanned her. Hold on. I started to tell her to be as fast as. Or no, hold on. Let me say. How long can we stay here? Nausea asked me. I started to tell her to be as fast as possible, but her face didn't look good. I scanned her vital signs. They were within acceptable range, but something about her just looked ... slumped. That's it. That's literally it. That's it. When this is an old woman who's been under extreme levels of stress and trauma and is in agony from walking on her disabled knees for hours. But her scan comes back completely fine. No notes about inflammation in her knees. No notes. Boof suffered a minor injury, but she's fine. What's your health at, Boof? 70%. We're good. We got this, Boof. Except I'm out of stamina, so maybe back up. Maybe back up. Ooh. We're doing a standoff. Boof, run! Okay, I have to get stamina before I can bite it again, so. Dang, Boof is strong, apparently. Do I actually have the game on the right settings? This seems too easy. Yeah, difficulty is unforgiving. Okay, that seemed really easy. I don't know why that was so easy. No, because the difficulty determines how much damage they do to me. It seems like we're not doing as much as we should be. We're just calling the save file Boof. So, the scan comes back completely fine, completely within acceptable parameters, no notes about anything at all. And this isn't Murderbot realizing its medical scanning program thing has been like compromised catastrophically or anything like that. Nope, it's just word of God from Martha Wells herself that physically disabled people, we actually don't have any injuries. We don't actually have anything wrong with our bodies that's causing us pain. It's all just in our heads. We're simply imagining it. Martha Wells literally says, word of God, about this disabled old woman. She is just imagining the fact that she's in agony. It's all in her head. There's literally nothing wrong with her. There's nothing wrong with her knees. She's simply fucking hysterical and is imagining it. What is that? Is that a fucking bear? That's a... Oh, another wolf. We're having a rally here. You can have some if you're nice. We don't even need to do a rally. We'll just eat this and leave. I think Boof, did you eat the food? Yep, Boof, we're running away now. Okay, yeah. So, the moral here is that, according to Martha Wells, is word of God through Murderbot's medical scanner that has nothing wrong with it. Physically disabled people are just lying about being in pain. Cause because her pain is not proven on this medical scanner in any capacity. It's not showing up as stress. It's not showing up as inflammation. Nothing. It's literally just in her head. She's imagining it. She's lying about it. But she looks slumped. And that's supposed to make up for the fact that Martha Wells is saying that women, in particular, are just lying about being in pain and are exaggerating for attention. That's what's going on here. And if you're thinking, wow, goddamn, I can't believe she did that, it gets worse. And you're thinking, how the fuck can it possibly get worse? I don't know. Martha Wells just has a fucking skill at getting worse. No matter what bigotry levels she had already reached and exceeded, it gets worse. Because, okay, we've finally gotten the old lady. Hi, Boof. You can have the food. We finally got her a mobility aid. She still has to literally stand on her legs that are causing her agony, and when we've just established word of fucking God via medical scan that she's actually imagining it all and is lying for attention. Because, you know, women and physically disabled people, and women in particular, black women in particular, because, yeah, it just doesn't affect you. You're just lying. It's all in your head. You're just making it up for attention and to be dramatic. Boof, you gotta eat that before the ravens eat it. So, we finally gotten her a mobility aid that still forces her to stand on the knees that are fucking killing her. But also they're not, because it's all in her head, because physically disabled people are just lying about being in pain and needing help. And you're thinking, okay, but how can it be worse? Because pretty much as soon as she gets this fucking mobility aid, she stopped using it. And then, does she ever use it again? I haven't finished the book. But they got her it. And then she gets off it, and then never uses it again. Instead, they're just carrying their fucking luggage on it, of which they have a shit ton, because they are unironically the caricatures of rich people that are shown in disasters running around with all of their jewelry and luggage, because they are conceited fucking rich people. Not because this is all they have left and they know they're going to need it to barter to survive. Not that these are like cherished family heirlooms or anything, just because they care about material objects more than they do the safety of other people. These are literally the caricatures of rich people who will shove all of their suitcases and shit into the back of a car that people are supposed to be getting into, because they care about more about their money than they do the people who are meant to be getting in that truck to survive the apocalypse together. But it's unironic, and we're not supposed to see this as like fucking disgusting and evil and like nonsensical at best. We're not supposed to think it's ridiculous that they are carrying around all these fucking suitcases and their coats. It's not cold. Does it get cold at any point?
No.
Is there any point in them carrying? I've just been told no, not even at the end of the book.
They don't even put their coats on at any point.
They don't wear these fucking coats at any point either. They're just carrying around all this shit. Like, that's not a literal fucking caricature of disgustingly rich people who have no idea. Wow, Boof doesn't like me. Why is she being mean? She's like snarling at me. Boof! What have I done to deserve this punishment? Okay. She's wagging her tail. I don't know. Nope. It's like a real one. Sorry. Maybe she's sleepy. Okay, we'll just go to sleep. She's angry at me. Ow. I'm getting a drink. But the part that it manages... Oh, she came closer while we're asleep, so maybe she's not mad at me. The part where it gets worse, after it's already gotten worse, is that they start using this mobility aid not to, yay, our major injury has healed. For the record, while we're on topic, the WolfQuest developers did say they had been considering doing permanent injuries, because in WolfQuest Classic you used to be able to get a thing that would make you actually have a broken leg from the start of the game, and you would just keep it. But so far, this is still in early access. It's not done yet. But they haven't figured out how to do that yet with the injury system that exists so far. They just released a bunch of new gameplay options, so presumably they will be adding that in at some point. Yeah. The part where it gets worse is pretty much she only actually uses this mobility aid as a mobility aid for like the equivalent of like maybe 10 minutes, and then she gets off of it, and then she never uses it again. And again, this is not an actual capitalist dystopia, so there's like no concerns about it'll only, I don't know, drive like certain amount of time with somebody in it before the wheels will literally fall to pieces and make you go buy another one or something like that. No, that would require Martha Wells actually thinking capitalism is bad, and she doesn't. This isn't a dystopia. Hold on. I don't know what button. It doesn't really matter, because jumping doesn't do anything in this game, really, but I want to know what button did I make jump. Okay, apostrophe. My X, S, W, and 2 keys on my regular keyboard don't work, so I had to remap everything to go around that. Yeah, she just never uses it again. And instead, they're using it to carry their luggage. So this is the equivalent, this is saying that there's nothing more shameful than using a mobility device, and you should do everything in your power not to use a mobility aid. Literally saying you should rather commit suicide via concentration camp or getting murdered by a space Nazi than use a mobility device. So she uses it, and then stops using it, and then never uses it again. And they use it to carry around their luggage. So imagine these are people that are supposed to be running for their lives. We're supposed to be so concerned about their safety and their health. We're supposed to be really concerned about them, even though they're all slave owners. And then they have an old lady with bad knees, whose bad knees have already been driven to the point of her not being able to go much further, to the point she was literally suggesting they just let her die and get murdered and thrown back in a concentration camp because she was slowing them down. And then she rides around in this thing for a little while and then gets off, and then her knees never cause her problems ever again, because Martha Wells is a eugenicist and also a shit writer because of that. She doesn't understand how disability works. If you have fucked up your disability to the point that you can barely walk any further because you've been pushing yourself too far, you're not just magically gonna go back to it, like my health in here. We're currently at 100% health. Just think of it as a video game, okay? We'll say my health got down to like 2%. I might even be able to find a cliff and jump off and show you. We'll pretend that's where Naja was when we were told that she looked slumped. And that word is so fucking infantilizing and obnoxious, and it makes me want to commit murder. We'll pretend Naja's health was where my cursor is up here. Just like just not even past that first W in the name. So that's where she got her health down to by pushing herself too far, by refusing to use a mobility aid because she's a caricature created by a eugenicist. Now she has been not even a good mobility aid, not even the mobility aid that would actually help her in this situation. It's the kind that is providing her the least amount of help possible. So she rode around because she refuses, because she is a caricature of a disabled person written by a eugenicist. So we say, okay, she rode around in that for what? Do you have any inkling of how long it was in the thing?
No.
We don't need to look up quotes, just off the top of your head. So, okay, we'll say, and again, this is a thing that forces her to continue standing, even though standing and walking is the thing that's causing her agony, that got her health down this far to begin with. So we say, okay, she's been riding around in this thing for a while, standing. So we can say, realistically, then her health might be back up to here. She might have recovered a little bit, because she's no longer bending her knees, but she's still standing, and it's only been a little while, so maybe her health is to here. So we'll just say, like, that's 2%. We're making up numbers. Now we'll say maybe she's at 18%. But according to Martha Wells, using this purposefully shitty thing, Boof is wagging her tail at me. Thanks, Boof. Using this purposefully shitty mobility aid that doesn't actually help her, that just brought her health all the way up to 100, and now it's locked there and can't go further down any further. This isn't how being disabled works. She gets the mobility aid in chapter
6.
In chapter 6.
In chapter 6 at 36%. By 55% in chapter 8, she's not using it anymore.
She got the mobility aid at the start of chapter 6. By chapter 8, she's not using it anymore.
And it's just following around behind them and using it, and they're using it for their luggage.
And again, it gets worse. This part where she's magically fully able-bodied now, that Martha Wells said it would be less shameful to commit suicide than use a wheelchair. She's now fully able-bodied. Her disability will never come up in the entire story ever again. Her health hasn't recovered from that, I'm pointing up here again, to that. It's all the way up here, and now she's got a magical fucking health lock, which means her health will not go down ever again. Because Martha Wells, huh?
She's playing in God.
Yeah, she's got God mode turned on. She's playing in God mode, which is not a thing in this game, but you could play on super easy mode, and that's pretty much the same thing. And then it gets even worse, because the mobility device, you're not prepared for what I'm about to say. The mobility device, not acknowledged by any character or the narrative, is an enslaved person. How do we know this? Because Naja, the old lady, hands her purse to it to carry. Not sits her purse down on the electric scooter, whatever you call the fuck. What were the fucking giant things? Giant scooter that you stand on?
Segways.
That it's not a Segway. Segway. Look up a Segway. It's a giant scooter thing you stand on with two wheels. She's not reaching over and sitting her purse on it like you would with an inanimate object, even if it were a wheelchair, which it's not. Instead, she's handing it to the mobility device, which takes it from her. This is not an inanimate object as we have been led to believe. It's a fucking person. It is a goddamn slave that they have bought. And we don't acknowledge this at any point beyond being told casually. We aren't supposed to actually notice this. If anything, we're supposed to think, oh, that's really funny. Huh? The quote is, "Then Naja took Farai's bag, handed it to the mobility device, and said blah 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 completely irrelevant shit."
Then she and Sophie walked away, the mobility device following.
Yeah, then she and her granddaughter walked away, and the mobility device, which is an enslaved person, which we've only just fucking found out, follows them after being handed a bag. It's not being hung on the handlebars of this thing while she pushes it or even lets Sophie play with it. It's following them because it is their slave that they have just fucking bought, and she just handed her bag to it. Again, as I said at the start of this, if this is your first time hearing anything about the Murderbot Diaries, this is a soft sci-fi universe, and I say soft because no rules ever stay consistent at all because Martha Wells is a shit fucking writer. Even before the bigotry, she's a shit fucking writer who couldn't have consistent continuity if it were to save her life. There are robots in this story, and they are all, every single one of them, enslaved to humans. And Martha Wells tells us this is good, this is the natural order of things. These are people. Yes, they are slaves, but, well, that's just the natural order of things, because the alternative, such as thinking that nobody should be enslaved, well, that's just too cringy for... Oh my gosh, is that bison? I didn't know they put bison in the game. We're not going to hunt the bison because they will pound us into dirt. But we're going to look at them. Holy shit, I'm saving the game. I didn't know they put bison in. That is so fucking exciting. And I can only show you on the lowest graphics settings because my computer will explode if I do anything else. Oh my gosh, look at that. Look at the blurry little brown blobs. This is new to me. This is fucking amazing. We're not going anywhere near them. Boof, don't go near them. Boof is looking at them. We have to run away so she doesn't die. So, robots exist in this setting, and they are all slaves, and they are happy slaves. You know, just like J.K. Rowling made the house elves happy slaves. And Martha Wells wants us to just be fine with this. She wants us to cheer this robot slavery on because she is a white supremacist. She is a slavery apologist. She thinks that slavery is good and that some people are just naturally suited to being enslaved. And that didn't even just start with the Murderbot Diaries. She's been doing that shit forever. Just like J.K. Rowling. Boof. Will you marry me already? Why are you so not enthused? I would like to finish this quest. I don't know what Boof likes. Apparently we're not entertaining her enough. Maybe she'll just like it if we just howl. I'll just stand here and push the H button. So, Murderbot, the main character, Murderbot, is a slave, and it is a happy slave. And it literally worships slave owners, and it has worshipped slave owners since before the first book even started, and it continues to worship those slave owners. That's what it's doing here. Finally, there we go. That worked. We've impressed Boof. Now we gotta officially name her Boof. Woohoo! So we're going into winter so we can look for a den and stuff. Murderbot is a happy slave. It is also, quote unquote, one of the good ones, TM. Because, I know, game, we don't need the game tips. I know what we're doing. We're just gonna do another rally. The rally thing seems to be invisible for some reason. But we're doing the animations. Anyways. Oh, we got a P to mark the spot. Now we're doing the pack rally. So, Murderbot is a happy slave, and it worships slave owners, and it has literally since the first book and continuing forever gone out of its way to murder and torture other slaves to death because it sees itself as one of the good ones and thinks that any slave that doesn't worship its slave owners should die. And this isn't... Murderbot is not... it's not a villain protagonist. It's not an anti-hero. We're not supposed to hate it. We're supposed to think that this is good and correct, and everything Murderbot says about other slaves is true. Because...
it knows best.
Because Murderbot knows best. Martha Wells literally pulls out literal fucking therapy speak to say that, yeah, freeing slaves is the real cruelty. Because if you try to free slaves, then that would mean you have to murder every single person who owns them, which, A, not true, B, that's a good thing. If people refuse to free their slaves, then those people deserve to die. This isn't a complicated topic. It's fact. If you own slaves and you refuse to free those slaves, then you will die for those slaves to get their freedom. You don't get to just own slaves. That's not how this works. But according to Martha Wells, it is. Because she's... Oh, there's invisible rocks here, I guess. Invisible on low graphics. Can I... We'll just try good graphics. We'll see how much of a failure this is. See, it's already frozen. We'll just do it. I want to see the rocks. This is going to be so slow, but we're going to do it. Yeah, there's rocks. So... Well, you're not telling me where the den is. We're looking for a den here. No, I'm gonna put the graphics back because that's too slow. Okay. Oh, now we see the marker. But yeah. What was I saying? The fact that Murderbot is a happy slave, and it's been murdering slaves since the first book, and going explicitly going out of its way to murder other slaves for fun, because Martha Wells is a white supremacist slavery apologist and wants us to worship slave owners and think that slave owners can never ever do anything, no matter what, to deserve being killed. But this is a new, this is even a new fucking low for this series, because not only is Murderbot murdering other slaves to protect its precious cinnamon roll slave owners, who, by the way, torture it in the first book and have been abusing and exploiting it ever since. But Martha Wells tells us to see that as adorable. They're adorable slave owners, says Martha Wells. I forgot we were supposed to be marking territory this whole time. I didn't scoot the map. Now Murderbot is not just murdering and torturing other slaves, it's literally buying other slaves for its slave owners to become their slaves. Because that's what just happened. Murderbot bought this fucking person to be a slave and to be a mobility device for the slave owner. Because if I didn't mention it, Naja is a fucking slave owner. And also, she's a... Even if we ignore the fact that she's a slave owner, which you shouldn't, she's she just never stops being racist to Murderbot, her slave, that is risking its life to rescue her. And just bought her a new fucking slave. And this isn't commentary of any kind. This isn't being criticized. This isn't something horrific we're supposed to be shocked and horrified by. No, Martha Wells only just tells us that this mobility device is a fucking enslaved robot. Because it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be goofy and silly. And wait, what? She handed it the bag to the thing? That's so wacky. That's so silly. That's wacky and adorable. And it's just so not only is this a eugenicist caricature, the mobility device in question is also literally enslaved. It is a literal fucking living, sentient slave. And I'm guessing they don't bring it with them. They don't even they just abandon it, I'm guessing. They literally just abandon this person, most likely. And even if they don't, This is a slave so fucking dehumanized by the narrative.
The nearest corral.
So yeah, Murderbot bought another slave for its fucking slave owners to use as a goddamn mobility aid. And then they fucking abandon it, and by they I mean all of them. Murderbot's pronouns are idiots. They abandon this person back to being a slave here at the end of the story. And this is, if you notice the fact that this is a goddamn person at all, because you don't hand your coat to a coat rack. You hang your coat on it. Because you don't hand things to inanimate objects. You just put them on inanimate objects. And Martha Wells decided to tell us that this person is a literal fucking slave who is alive and thinking. Just so we would go, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. That's so silly and quirky and adorable. That the fucking mobility device is a slave. And this is a series that everybody will try to browbeat you over the head with, oh, the theme is that robots are people too, every time you criticize this exact bullshit and the slavery apologism in the series, and the fact that this series wants to advertise itself as that, but it fucking loathes the mechanical guts of every single fucking robot in this series. If you are not the main character, who is a fucking cyborg who is dehumanized, or you are not Art, A-R-T, the living ship who is better than all the other ones because it can speak proper English, not joking, then you are worth less than a fucking Nazi in this setting. And according to the author and the main character, but most importantly, the fucking author. Because there are ways to make a main character be a horrible fucking person without doing horrible things yourself as the author. Example A, Exhibit A, Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions. The protagonist of that book is literally a fucking eugenicist, slavery apologist, white man who thinks that all of these horrible things are good. And he is an actual fucking unreliable narrator, and the entire point of the story is that he's wrong. And also has no idea what he's fucking talking about. But that's not what's going on here in the Murderbot Diaries. Everything that Murderbot does and says about slaves is what Martha Wells literally wants us all to agree with and what she actually thinks. Because not only does she uphold it within the story in how the world around Murderbot reacts to its decisions and its thoughts by rewarding it for killing other slaves and punishing it the one fucking time it thought about offering to free another slave, and again, have to reiterate every single fucking time, not because it was the right thing to do, but because it was trying to cause a distraction, because the other slave whose friends it had just murdered, that it had picked a fight with on purpose, because it wanted to murder them, because Murderbot is a fucking serial killer, Murderbot started losing that fight that it started after murdering the other two slaves, and then as a fucking distraction offered to free this slave. Explicitly as a distraction it had no actual intention of following through with, and then narratively was punished by the other slave saying, I want to kill you. When Murderbot asked, what do you want to do? And then the other slave said, I want to kill you. Because Murderbot literally picked this fight out of pure fucking sadistic malice. It literally picked this fight that none of the other slaves here had a choice in doing, because Murderbot wanted to fucking torture them to death because it is a fucking sadistic serial killer. And so Murderbot is punished by the narrative for offering to free this slave when it wasn't actually offering to free the slave. It was literally saying this as a distraction after it just murdered this person's two other fucking friends. After Murderbot went out of its fucking way to make this situation happen. The other slaves had no choice but to chase Murderbot. Murderbot could have fucking left at any goddamn point, and it very explicitly chose to turn around and get into a fight with these people because it is literally a fucking serial killer. They were in no danger. Murderbot was in no danger from these people. It did this because it's a fucking serial killer, but we're supposed to think, oh, poor Murderbot. It's that's sad for Murderbot. That reasons that it's a fucking serial killer, a thing we're just supposed to be fine with, and think is sad because Murderbot keeps putting itself in danger by attempting to murder other slaves for the pure sadistic joy of it. And now Murderbot is literally buying slaves for its slave owners, and this entire situation is not presented as horrible. This is Murderbot being a horrible person that we are supposed to hate. It's just presented for everybody. Huh?
It's supposed to be an Easter egg that the mobility device is a fucking robot.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a cute, adorable, wacky, quirky Easter egg. That you notice that the mobility device is actually a fucking living robot that you hand things to. It's not... She's just laying down. And it's pretty much guaranteed that Naja will never appear in the next Murderbot book, which is going to be the last one. It's been obvious for 6 years now that Martha Wells has no interest in writing anything in this series. And we know she is only contracted to write another book, and it's going to be from Baradwaj's perspective, and if you don't know who she is, I'm not going to bother telling you, because she doesn't matter. She literally hasn't been, quote-unquote, a character since the first book, and she wasn't even a character in that. She was just a name in the background who contributed nothing to the story. So Martha Wells has made the genius decision of making the next book, telling everybody that the next book will be from Baradwaj's perspective. Oh, and Baradwaj, despite being almost eaten by an alien in the first book, she's also not physically disabled, even though that almost killed her. No, she's able-bodied. And also, the next book probably won't come out for another 3 fucking years, long after anybody has enough shits left to give about this series. The only reason anybody new is still reading the series, with how absurdly overpriced these books are, especially when they're literally not fixing fucking typos and shit, is because the publisher keeps giving them away for free, because they know that's the only way they can get anybody to read them. Oh god, we are gonna fall off this fucking cliff. Okay, we're good. We're sliding. We're not just falling to our deaths. Okay. Let's go this way. Actually, we don't even need to be... Wait. Okay, we're sliding still. We don't need to be over here. We don't need to have the river as part of our territory. That's unnecessary. We'll just go north. But not too far north. So, Naja, this is the first time she's ever appeared. This is the first time we've ever had a physically disabled person in the story who's admitted to be physically disabled a disabled person. And she's probably never going to appear ever again. Because there's only one fucking book going to be written left. And it sure as fuck is not going to have Nana Naja, the character nobody gives a fuck about. Even with the fandom that remains, that hadn't given up by system collapse in genuine, hope for the series to do anything, they are getting sick of this shit, because there's only so long you can keep introducing us to more and more cardboard cutout characters that give us no reason to give a fuck about any of them, especially when they literally treat the main character like absolute shit because they are racist piles of garbage. So this is the first ever disabled character we get in this series, physically disabled, And it's a eugenicist caricature telling disabled people that we should be so ashamed of using mobility devices that we should rather kill ourselves than face the indignity. You don't need to nuzzle my power cord, little kitty, and make this whole thing fall and ruin the video. Martha Wells just saying that you should be so ashamed of using a mobility device that you should rather literally kill yourself instead of doing that. And then the mobility device is a fucking slave that isn't acknowledged to be a person by the narrative. And if you do even notice that it is a living fucking person that is a robot, you're supposed to think, oh, that's so funny and so cute. I wasn't expecting that. It's literally supposed to make you go, oh, that's so silly. That's so cute. And there's like a specific like amusing in a Looney Tunes didn't think that was going to happen way. And most people are probably not going to notice because as I said before in one of the other videos, just like with the first Trump administration, they've now gotten rid of everybody except the pure sycophants. That's kind of how this works. Like, you've heard the metaphor of boiling a frog. Excuse me, Boof, we're just running into you, sorry. You've heard the metaphor of boiling a frog. We're going the wrong way. Maybe it would help if we were in scent view. The metaphor is, if you put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put a frog in some water and slowly heat it to boiling, the frog won't realize what's happening until it's too late. This whole series, just like the first Trump administration, is the boiling of the frog. Except here we've got more than one frog, and the only ones that are going to be left at the end are those who are willing to tolerate the increasing temperature and continue sticking around for the second boiling. This metaphor doesn't really work, but shush. So most of the people left, anybody reading these books, yeah, get that bug. I'll get it for you. Good boy. Good kitty. I don't know where this den is. This metaphor is kind of falling apart, but just think of it as the Trump administration, because that's a good simile. Everybody in the first Trump administration who said no and put roadblocks in Trump's way, they aren't with the administration anymore. They've been kicked out, so now it's only the yes men left. The people who will say yes, no matter what he does, no matter how extreme, no matter how against their earlier stated morals it is. They will just say yes. Which part?
That's what the fucking vice president was. He used to make fun of Trump.
Yeah, the fucking, what is it? J.D. Vance. For some reason I was going to call him C.D. Vance. I don't know why. He used to literally say that Trump is a fucking Nazi and evil and nobody should ever work with him, and now look at him. He's the vice president and kowtowing to Trump's every whim. It is the boiling of the frog. This is why the later Murderbot books, like Platform Decay, have such high ratings so far, because the only people willing to stick around long enough to rate them and read them are the people who will literally say in their reviews, even when they rate them highly, they will literally say, this one really bored me to tears, while giving it a 4 or 5 star rating and saying, this bored me to tears and nothing happened. And I thought, I feel like I wasted my money, but I still love Murderbots and I like the author. And I would feel bad rating this honestly, so I'm going to give it a good rating anyways. That's why this book has such high ratings, and that's why most of the later books in the series have such high ratings, while the earlier ones will have lower ratings, because people who rated the first few books, really low. I have a little kitty. It's leaning against my foot. Are not going to continue reading. to continue evening the score with basic fucking honesty about the fact that nothing happens in this goddamn book and every single character is interchangeable and brings nothing to the plot in any way. Finally, we found this den. Oh my gosh. Maybe. Is this not it? Okay, it is. Gosh. So, yeah, that's... Anything else I should be saying besides the general? That's why this book is rated so highly, because people have been dropping from this fandom like flies with every new book that comes out. We literally did the math last year. We're at 19% original audience retention from book 1 to the last book to come out, which was System Collapse, literally 3 goddamn years ago. So only 19% of the people who read the first book stuck around long enough to read what was the 11th, or maybe the 10th book, because I think that would have been the 10th book in the series, because 2 short stories came out between that and Platform Decay. And since nobody else does research, the other 2 short stories were Rapport and Data Ghost. And also Data Ghost is Martha Wells' anti-abortion story that just got published in 2025 because she is a conservative. If the fucking slavery apologism, eugenics, just unending anti-blackness and racism weren't hint enough for you, she is a conservative. Even though she poses as progressive and says, oh, Trump will totally arrest me for writing queer literature. And then the queer literature she writes is the only relationships that matter are heterosexual ones, and adoption means you're a fake parent, and the only real relationships, again, that matter are heterosexual ones that are capable of reproducing eugenics offspring. And for the Murderbot Diaries, literally just stereotyping non-binary people as not being able to exist unless you literally don't have genitalia because you are either a robot or a cyborg who was mutilated at birth. Have you noticed that there's literally no non-binary characters in this series at all that are human, or at least admitted to be human? And yes, I'm going to repeat that. There are no non-binary characters in this series that are admitted to be human, because the 2 token neopronoun users, those aren't characters. Those are token names with neopronouns attached, and they are immediately shoved off screen as quickly as fucking possible and are never seen again. They have no personality. They literally just exist to be token. They're not actual characters. People need to grasp the difference between a character, and a fucking tokenized goddamn name existing purely in the background and then shoved off screen as quickly as possible so that Martha Wells doesn't alienate the audience she's actually seeking out, which is conservatives, which is what this whole thing is. It's training her audience, even if they weren't slavery apologists when they started reading the series. If they happily continue swallowing this shit, that's what they are becoming. And I keep saying this over the years, over and over again. I don't blame you for not noticing the slavery apologism and bigotry in this series in the first place, but the second it's pointed out to you and you start defending it, you can go fuck yourself. You're doing it on purpose now. Huh?
Using real-world pro-slavery shit, which is
yes,
baked into the book.
Because just because the people enslaved in this book are black and brown and then whitewashed for the TV show because Martha Wells is a fucking capitalist bootlicker who doesn't actually give a fuck about anybody, just because they are robots and cyborgs. Hey, you don't need to stab me. That's unnecessary. Every excuse used to justify enslaving people in this series is real-world slavery apologism, and Martha Wells stands. If you're unfamiliar, I guess I should define that. A stan is. Hold on, the cat's getting his claws stuck in my shorts, and then I'm knocking the thing over while trying to move. Hello. Are you gonna come? You want to purr for the camera? Right as a giant, loud truck goes by. Purr for the video. What are you looking at it for? He's looking at the microphone like it's gonna eat him. Okay, he's not purring for you guys. Just imagine a big cat purring. You're distracting me by stabbing me in the leg, which you're doing again. What was I saying? It's real world slavery apologism, and
she just makes it true.
And Martha Wells is just doing pro-slavery propaganda, and it's literally working. If you ask, like, there's nothing worse you can say to the people in this fandom than the fact that Murderbot's slave owners should die, and Murderbot should get to kill them, and this should be portrayed as something to celebrate and a victory. Because Martha Wells tells you that Murderbot's slave owners, who are explicitly its slave owners, are adorable little cinnamon rolls who've never hurt anyone in their lives. And the real cruel thing that they did to Murderbot was tell it that it could do anything it wants. Because telling slaves they don't have to be slaves, which isn't even what they were saying to it, that's the real cruelty. You know, a la J.K. Rowling doing this exact shit with the house elves. It's almost like slavery apologism follows a blatant fucking pattern that anybody can pick up on if they're actually using critical thinking skills. But, again, there's another den over here somewhere. Yeah. So, not only are we continuing the slavery apologism, not only continuing to dehumanize and demonize slaves in this story, we are making the ableism just go straight to literally saying you should literally prefer to kill yourself rather than use a mobility device even when you are in agony. And if you say you're in agony, actually, that's literally all in your head because it won't show up on a medical scan. And again, I keep saying, this isn't actually a dystopia. We're not actually criticizing it. Is that a moose skull? It's a moose skull. We're taking that. We're not actually criticizing anything. Murderbot's scan failing to properly goddamn show the amount of physical stress that Naja is under, our disabled character, token disabled caricature, I should say. The scan not showing the amount of physical stress that she's under, that's not commentary on anything. This isn't commentary on the fact that Murderbot bought this scanner in this corporate dystopia and clearly needs to get a different one that is meant to actually care about humans, or just, people in general. Nope, it's not commentary at all. It's just presented as fact that if you are a disabled person and you say you're in pain, well, you're literally just making that up. It's literally not true. It's not proven by your fucking invasive super sci-fi medical scan. No, you're just lying about it. And then also, the mobility device you refuse to use because it's shameful is also a slave, and that's not even the reason you don't want to fucking use this person as an object, because you and we, the audience, aren't supposed to give a fuck about that at all or be horrified. It's just saying that disabled people are shameful and we should push through any amount of agony, no matter what, even when doing so or not doing so is the easiest thing in the world when you have unlimited amounts of money. And also, being a caricature like this is actively endangering the lives of people that we're told you care about. So, yeah, that's the newest Murderbot book published in May 2026. Martha Wells has become even more explicitly ableist than she was before. we are still demonizing slaves and dehumanizing slaves while worshipping slave owners and space Nazis. And so much more. Any parting comments?
All your commentary is correct, but it's important to note, in the book, none of this is framed this way because it's just a silly little joke about how stubborn old people can be. You know, it's just a joke, and that joke is rooted in ideas that are being reinforced per that tweet.
Was that a tweet? I don't
Either
even know
a
what
tweet
tweets
or a Blue Sky post. I don't know what a Blue Sky post is called.
Yep. Yeah. None of this is framed the way I'm explaining it to you. It's all framed as a matter of course and silly, and we should just think it's funny and not question it.
It's a silly, cutesy little joke.
It's just a silly, cute little joke that isn't.
Like all old people were stubborn and refused to.
Even though these are people that are from a so-called utopia where none of this shit should happen, because, again, there's a really good Tumblr post. Hey. Says, among other things, being racist will always ruin your art. And I can't remember all of it off the top of my head, but it's by Mosaic Briar, and it's talking about white fandom's reaction to the movie Sinners, and the fact that white people are watching the movie Sinners, and of all of the goddamn characters, and all of the blatant in-your-face messages the movie has, they are still deciding that the white vampire, who represents colonization and assimilation and colonization and slavery, they're saying that he's actually the good guy and he's actually a poor innocent victim, while he's actively murdering black people and sicking the KKK on them. And I'm going to sneeze.
And
maybe.
A fucking pedophile or whatever was supposed to be going on with him being obsessed with Sammy.
And the post is about how all of these white people are watching this movie and then coming away and pretending that the white vampire is actually the most important character, and all of this shit and all of the themes of the movie are flying straight over their heads because they are the white supremacists the movie is about. And the fact that nothing they create is going to be worth anything to anybody except other white supremacists, and they shouldn't be acting surprised that nobody wants anything to do with their shitty white supremacist art worshipping the fucking white dude from Sinners, the white vampire who is murdering black people because he's a fucking racist. And it's just I'm summarizing it very badly, but you just gotta find the post and read it yourself. And it's just so well, because it's just talking about how being racist will literally always ruin your art, because by upholding racist ideals and hanging on to them for dear life, no matter how many times you are confronted, it's just meaning that you are going to produce the most shallow, shitty fucking stories anybody can imagine. And that, like, nobody except other people that are just as or even more racist than you are going to want anything to do with you. Especially when you continue publicly escalating this shit and escalating it within your story. You are always going to alienate everybody that is even a little bit less of a fucking racist sack of shit than you are, until the only people you're left with are people even more racist than you are. And then you don't get to act surprised when those are the kind of people that are around you, because that's who you've chosen to be around. I'm explaining it very badly, but yeah. Just, Martha Wells is a shit writer for so many reasons, and a lot of those reasons all go back to the fact that she's dedicated her personality to not changing, because that's why she doesn't do character development, and why she thinks character development is completely optional for stories, because quote-unquote real people don't change very much. What is this?
The post.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Your phone is so heavy. I will read the post to you quick. This is posted by Mosaic Breyer from June 17th, 2025. I'll just read it now. The only upside to people being racist is it will always ruin their art. Sometimes it's not right off the bat, and sometimes not in a way you see for a minute. This post is about sinners, but also any other time a piece of media requires some black authenticity that non-black people pretend is negotiable. You know, when you are reading a good novel and something just comes off super wrong, and before you know it, you've put the book down and are Googling their name to confirm? Yep, they've got some weird social hang-up or hatred. People who ignore the truth of the world end up with a lot lacking in their overall range. And the biggest example of this is how many people have destroyed their own legacy with their own hatred. We will always remember Lovecraft for naming his cat the R slur, the hard R slur, when we approach his horror genre. Every part of the book Dune that is good comes from the writer and his wife, and every part that sucks can be directly called homophobic, racist, or sexist. Like, oh, our dogs are hungry. Our wolves are hungry. We're just gonna auto run that way. Click. I don't know why the keys keep not doing that. Like, even if we didn't label them, the writer's social failings show up in their work. Everything I have ever learned about Harry Potter has been against my will, but damn, every issue she has in real life is telegraphed in her choices. Like, you can go back and see how people's lack of intersectionality set them up for embarrassment, or how their lack of genuine love shows up. My brain is thinking on the white people make a book that has a black character, and the design is just offensive. Like, they just failed. They did such a bad job, but somehow they are shocked and offended. Children's book with black characters with little kids have struck me as uncomfortable, and I've dropped them and checked the artist or writer, and every time it's a white artist. And then in parentheses, I've also been wrong. Hope that helps. It's just about responding to the problem seriously, not being perfect. Mind you, I'm just mixed, and the comments you can find for the book online will be black people explaining this, yet every white person is responding like this has never happened in all time. There just wasn't an honest effort to even respect black people in the first place, but the reaction will be defensive for sure. So yeah, everything has context, but you can do whatever you want. I just know the people who are flooding Tumblr with art of the white vampire from Sinners are gonna crash out in 5 years when they don't understand why their pieces are unreadable to their desired audience, and the only people who consistently engage with them are louder about their hateful views in the comments. What people allow in their comments is a reflection of what they really care about, and it usually just holds true. Like, yeah, sure, you can, but it's weird and absolutely says something about your relationship with race. I'll tell you for free, Michael B. Jordan is too attractive for you to pretend you can't horn dog over anyone else, and that there are simply too many other good vampires. For this particular case, the hold on to Remick, aka the white vampire, is mostly a reactionary one from people who are triggered when they are told no. The vampires in Sinners have a very clear parallel to violence and oppression that is not subjective. Some black people have expressed clear discomfort with the focus of Remick in all spaces of fandom and even uses of him being shipped. It is an effortless fix to make Remick content show only in spaces that ask for it, but people will demand to have access to the shared space while refusing to care about the other voices in the group because they are used to being allowed to speak over them. Let me help you out here. If you, in any vast fan fiction context, make Annie engage with vampires romantically, you've taken her so far out of character, you are just desperate. She is the lens of the movie that directly tells us how it works and directly expresses that it would keep her from her most important goal of rejoining her lost child. It doesn't matter if you think it's hot. Sammy being bitten means his soul is enslaved forever by the rules the movie set up, and that is clearly a punishment worse than death for all of the black characters. Enslaving Sammy and calling it hot vampire art, despite that being the central conflict and it never once being separated from racism, is a choice you'll cringe about later. This is your Hetalia. It's that obviously weird what you're doing. Not every negative reaction is someone picking on you. You can play dumb and say it's fiction and you're allowed blah blah, whatever dumb, all-catching, absolute statement you choose. So I can't draw hot vampires anymore? So I can't be attracted to blah blah blah? You don't care about black people feeling safe no matter how much they tell you they need it. Just accept that about yourself and spare us the show. I am not sitting higher than anyone on any morals. I write dead dove cartoon porn online, I get it. It's never been okay to throw dark fetish shit in the mainstream spaces, and pretending you don't see it as a valid trigger is racist. This isn't a fandom thing. This is people who admit to having no ethos on the topic of racism, to begin with, being defensive and wrong about racism. A good portion of these fanfictions you guys keep throwing into the tiny spaces meant just for Annie that make her romantic with the vampires are just race play. And that's not like a passive thing you can just do to your brain. Hello? And if you are about to tell me it is not race play, you better be able to define the words race, culture, ethnicity, and nationality comfortably and with the ability to utilize them, or else you don't even understand enough to speak on these topics. I do not understand why people feel so comfortable saying their opinion on racism and then just saying shit like, well, no one ever told me, later in the debate. You shouldn't have acted like you had the same right to the discourse just because you are pissed off. Some topics must be talked about with care and respect, or you are participating in causing harm. People who wouldn't be comfortable talking to a black person in Walmart will swear they have every right to their culture if they decide they want it. This is often an issue where black culture is treated like it isn't real, but it's also just mean-spirited and classic aggressive white people bullying. We've seen a million times online where a group is told, hey, that's racist, and like clockwork they double down. If they can pretend any negative response is discourse enough to other white people, or is discourse enough, other white people won't even engage, and then they just have to get away with the space. People can't go to the sinners community People can't go to the sinners community and see random people begging to fuck a caricature, desperate to ignore the much, much, much hotter black vampire, and read fanfics that puts the black characters in love with their literal killers and oppressors, and then in parentheses, this isn't debatable, the movie is very clear, and keep returning there. But like I said, people will do what they want and they'll play stupid and tell themselves it's really just unfair that people won't let them be happy for no reason. Whine, whine, whine. And then inevitably, you'll see them spiral out at some point, putting yourself in a position where you have to keep telling yourself you aren't racist or you don't care trains you not to listen, not to notice, and not to understand. So you'll keep making art that lacks meaningful culture, and one day when you make something that really matters to you and that little bullshit you kept letting slide gets in there too, and it ruins your art and further pigeons you into a narrow set of behaviors. So, karma or whatever, I guess. So that's the post. Yeah, all that. All that is Martha Wells in a nutshell, and everything she is doing. She has been writing and publishing since 1993. Literally longer than I've been alive, and she has been getting criticized for her racism the whole goddamn time. She has been getting criticized for her bigotry the entire goddamn time, and every single time she is criticized and educated, she chooses to instead double down on the bigotry. And in response, she will make a caricature to stick in the next book to mock people like you who tell her that what she is doing is harmful. This, among so many other things, leads to Platform Decay and the Murderbot Diaries, a series so shit and so tired that only 19% of the audience had stuck around 3 years ago. It's been 3 years since 19% of the fandom gave enough fucks to even rate System Collapse. We've had 2 completely meaningless and filled with bigotry short stories, not including just the anti-abortion shit and claiming that if you get an abortion, you are an even more abusive parent than your parents. Not even just the genocide apologism and continual worship of disgustingly rich people at the expense of poor people. And now we have this. another story where nothing happens except more slavery apologism and even more explicit ableism than has happened yet in the series to date. And people are fucking sick of this shit. And Martha Wells will just continue doubling down and doubling down and doubling down until she fucking dies. She chose in 2023 to defend the racist caricatures, anti-black caricatures in particular, that she wrote into her fantasy series starting in 2011 and continuing all the way up until 2017. She chose to double down on that by defending British colonizers rather than simply owning up to what she'd done and apologizing. Martha Wells is not a good person. She has no interest in being a good person. She has decided that real people don't change all that much, therefore, neither do fictional characters. She has decided that not changing is what is natural and normal, and that therefore it's just her natural wiring that makes her a racist eugenicist. It's not actually her fault, and she's not doing anything wrong, and you are not allowed to criticize her. And if you do, she will make a caricature of you to put in the next book. It's June 8th, 2025. Stop giving Martha Wells and authors like her the benefit of the doubt. And this also goes for Nadia Okorafor, because a lot of Martha Wells stans will also tokenize Nadia Okorafor because she is a black woman, an African American woman, second generation immigrant, maybe first generation, I can't remember how that works for the generation things, but they will use her to say that because they also enjoy her works, which are also just filled with the exact same bullshit that Martha Wells is doing, including the anti-blackness and slavery apologism. Just like Martha Wells is also a fucking misogynist despite being a woman, Nadia Okorafor, despite being a black, physically disabled person, is anti-black, is doing obscene levels of cultural appropriation and ableism and eugenics, and also hates poor people. Let me put it this way. It's not shocking in any capacity that people in 2026 who are still defending every one of Martha Wells' bigotries and even just the bad writing, it's not shocking in any way that they also worship Nadia Okorafor, because it's all the exact same shit. Yeah. Can't think of anything else to end the video with besides stop letting people get away with this shit, because when you keep giving the author the benefit, can't remember if I said this yet for this video, but the only reason I'm continuing to read these books is because if I'm not loud about this, then nobody else will be. I've learned that the hard way in fandoms past, and I'm going to continue doing it, because if not for me criticizing the shit in this book, nobody else would do it, because rightfully for them, most people give up and they never look back because they're so sick of the series and so sick of Martha Wells' bullshit that they want nothing to do with it, and so they leave the fandom spaces. They never mention it ever again. They don't take the time to explain what is wrong with the series because they know that the fandom will dogpile them and harass them, which they do to me all the goddamn time. I can't let people leave replies on my posts. I have to turn anons off because they are cowards. And the funny part is, though, they know that they're bigoted pieces of shit and that what they are doing is shameful. That's why they will only say it when none of their friends and family will find out what they're saying. They know that what they're doing is wrong. But anyways, most people that read this series and see all the slavery apologism, see the ableism, see all of the bigotry, including the misogyny, they just quit it in disgust and never speak of it again because they just want nothing to do with it, and they don't realize that by refusing to tell people the truth about the series, even though it takes a bit of effort, you are just letting the fandom that agrees with everything that Martha Wells is saying in terms of the slavery apologism, the dehumanization, all of that shit, the eugenics, the pedophilia apologism. We didn't even get into that in this video, but I have other videos you can find out. By not being the canary in the coal mine, you are just letting, this is a weird metaphor, you're just letting, I don't know, the ghosts of the dead miners who've already suffocated to death, you're just letting them lure other people into the series. And if those people don't have enough critical thinking skills and don't actually have a baseline level of, again, care for other people and ability to detect bullshit and ability to draw the fucking line when it becomes clear the bullshit in this series isn't in here to be criticized, it's just what the author genuinely believes, then by staying silent about everything that you noticed wrong with this series, you are just helping to train more and more people into regurgitating all of this shit verbatim and just make, like, I'm not trying to blame people, but like, if you have the ability to talk about this, you should. Because we just need more people to fucking talk about this shit, because the more people reading these books uncritically, the more people this fandom manages to harass and bully into accepting the bigotry that Martha Wells is, the literal fucking white supremacist propaganda in all its fucking forms, including Nazi levels of fucking ableism and white supremacy and hatred. She's just training more people to be white supremacists, and it's just going to it's making the world a worse place to live in. Because all of these people, maybe not all of them, but most of them are going to go on to write racist fan fiction. They're going to make racist fan art. Some of them are going to be inspired to write their own racist original stories. And somebody has to draw the fucking line. So that's why I am still reading this book series. That's why I am going out of my way to read every book Martha Wells has written, just so that I can actually educate people on all of this shit and how this propaganda is working and what it is fucking training them to accept. So, yeah. Again, June 8th, 2026. If you're watching this in 2134, I hope global warming isn't terrible. Stuff like that. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else to say besides you should care about other people. You should care about minorities. If you are not part of a minority group, you have a fucking responsibility to talk to people from that group before writing about them. And you need to, if you are selling books for money, you need to pay people money that are from the minority groups that you are writing about to act as sensitivity readers and call you out on your bullshit. And you need to hire people that are going to disagree with you. You can't just hire your friends. You have to hire people that know that you are going to pay them well to call you on your bullshit. You have to be the kind of person that people are actually willing to trust with saying, hey, this thing you wrote is fucking eugenics. You need to get rid of this. Martha Wells is not that person. She's been writing, she is the same age as J.K. Rowling. She's been writing just as long as J.K. Rowling. She is a conservative. It is 2026. Stop giving her the benefit of the doubt. I hope if you're watching this in 2134, whatever year I said, I hope by then everybody grasps, looking back to here, that Martha Wells is a conservative, racist piece of shit, and that all of the shit she's writing is literally conservative propaganda. I hope this shit is public domain and you are having the time of your fucking lives turning this garbage into something actually meaningful and just stuff. And for everybody else in 2026, pro tip, you cannot copyright a name. You can't copyright the name Murderbot. You can write about a character named Murderbot who's not a fucking serial killer who worships slaves. You can worships slave owners. I keep getting used to saying slaves. You can, yeah, you can literally write your own shit. You can and should, if you like writing or animating or drawing or anything, any kind of creativity shit, you should be writing spite, out of spite for this series and this author. You should be writing stories that take everything that Martha Wells is setting on fire and you fucking fix it and make the world a better place and set a fucking example. And again, I have to say this every goddamn time. Martha Wells has been very clear that her explicit inspiration for writing this book series of bigoted propaganda was the Imperial Ratch series by Anne Leckie, a series that actually cares about the people it's representing. Everything wrong with the Murderbot Diaries is something that the Imperial Ratch series got right, and Martha Wells got mad about that and decided to fuck it up. Alright, that's it. Bye bye.